Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining and thank you for being on time. We appreciate you joining us today for the first day of our Student Leadership Conference Week, where we will be exploring the future of artificial intelligence. We have a special presenter ready for you today, and I'd like to just get started with a few ground rules just to kick things off. First, my name is Charmaine. I'll be serving as a moderator today. I am a student with CUNY School of Professional Studies, and I'm graduating this semester with a bachelor's in sociology. Feel free, all of you, to drop some of your majors in the chat as well. Let us know a little bit about you, and we are more than happy to have you. Let's keep going with a few more announcements. Today's session is being recorded and it will be published on the CUNY SPS website by the Office of Student Life. Please keep this in mind. We intend to transcribe this meeting as well, and we ask that you please keep your mics muted due to background noise, etc., but also to be respectful of the presenter and the other participants today. Closed captions will be enabled. And whether your camera is on or off, we please ask that you are mentally present, that you stay engaged. And if your background, etc., permits, we would love to have you on camera. It does help for engagement, and we love to see all of your faces. Please keep in mind this is a learning environment. So we ask everyone to be respectful of one another's thoughts, opinions, and any ideas that are exchanged today. We encourage you to share in the chat, but we also welcome you to ask questions during our Q&A portion at the end of this meeting. We're all intending to learn together. We do have a raffle for this conference, and information will be entered at the end of the session. So please stay tuned for this as well. With that being said, let's get started with introducing our presenter so that I don't take up too much of his time. We have a special professor here today that teaches with CUNY SPS. This is Dr. Krako. He has published several works, and he, in addition to teaching, is training other teachers to teach online as the assistant director for instructional support in the Office of Distant Learning at the University of Louisiana. In addition to publishing works, he developed a game-based learning management system and educational video games. His current research interests include professional development, utopian studies, and of course, artificial intelligence. He's received his PhD in English with the CUNY Graduate Center with a concentration in British Romantic poetry. I think you all are going to love this presentation. And fun fact, I am one of his previous students. I won't delay any further. I am going to pass the mic over to you, Dr. Krako, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much, Charmaine, for that excellent introduction and for this wonderful opportunity to present on this topic that I've been talking about so much. And thanks to Reshma as well for helping to coordinate this, and to the CUNY SPS Office of Student Life for inviting me to present. I'm really excited to be here today. And with that, I'm actually going to start off here with a little poll. So I'm just going to jump to that. And welcome everyone. Thank you so much for making time to join today. I hope you get something from this presentation. So I'm going to jump into a quick poll. If you have your phone ready, you can scan this QR code. The question is, how do you feel about AI? How do you feel about AI? So I'm going to give you a minute or two to just scan that and just try to, this is a word cloud activity, so try to type in your response in one word. And I will admit that it is limited to the first 25 responses, so that may, put some fire under you to get in there. But I think we're good with the number of participants we have right now. How do you feel about AI? Okay, hopefully you've scanned that code. I'm going to switch to the responses here. Excited, confident, ambivalent. Okay. Concerned. Yeah, definitely. I can sense there's a full range here of emotion when it comes to AI. Switch back real quick. If you haven't been able to scan this, go ahead and scan that and put in your response. Those responses so far are really similar to the last time I did this poll. I've done this poll with faculty on my other campus, my main campus where I work full time, the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. And the responses are similar. I can tell you, faculty feel the same way you do about AI. They're excited, they're optimistic, they're hopeful, but they're also concerned, a bit afraid, fearful. They're not sure what it is, how it works, how it'll impact their classes. And so again, we have the full range of emotion there. And I think, the best way to address something like that, where we have a disruptive new technology and we're not sure what the impact will be, is to become familiar with it. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the responses real quick. I think it's, inexperience. Great. Well, hopefully this presentation here will provide you with some additional insights and strategies to help you feel a little bit more confident with this technology. I'm an amateur. My background is not in AI. Obviously, my degree is in English literature. But as someone who trains faculty day in and day out to teach online and hybrid courses, my office and I have had to become very familiar with this technology, particularly in terms of practice, right? How do we use it? How do we prevent it if that's the case? How do we design for and around it and with it? These are all questions that have come up. Okay, so now I'm going to throw one more question at you. So let me deactivate this. And my next question is, here we go. So let me activate this poll. Okay, it's now active. So the question is, what is the most important AI skill for students? Okay, what is the most important AI skill for students? Again, this is a word cloud activity, so try to respond with as few words as possible. You'll scan that QR code or go to the web address and enter your response. So please do that now if you can. What is the most important AI skill for students? This is a presentation about advancing AI literacy, and we will be talking about insights, we'll be talking about some specific tools, and we'll be talking about competencies around AI. And so I want to know from you, before we get started, what do you think is the most important AI skill for students? And hopefully I cover that in this presentation. And if not, I'll make sure to include it in the next version of this presentation. Okay, so I'm going to hop over to the response page and just see what that word cloud is looking like. Critical thinking. Yes, excellent. Presentations, ethics. Absolutely. There's been a lot of ink spilled on the subject of AI and ethics, ethical use. That's something that we'll talk about later on. Designing, presentations. Okay, yeah, how to design with it. Reasoning, learning. Absolutely. Okay. All right, one last time, I'm going to go back to the instructions in case you need to scan that QR code, and we'll check back in a second to look at the responses. I'm curious, there's one skill in particular I was predicting would show up in this word cloud. Maybe it will. We'll see. And it's a skill that we'll talk about later on in this presentation. Okay. Okay, so it hasn't changed. Okay, so the skill that I have in mind is what some call prompt engineering. So that is, the way these tools work, they need to be prompted. They're not fully autonomous in the sense that, we see in science fiction films and movies and so on. They need to be prompted. And so writing a good prompt is a very important skill when it comes to the current stage of generative AI. Okay, so I'm going to jump back to the slideshow. Thank you for your engagement there. And we'll get started. So we've already done intros. I'll skip ahead. I do want to introduce my co-presenter, and I want to. This is part of sort of ethical use, being transparent. This presentation was actually generated, co-created with an AI tool called Gamma. And if you've never heard about it, I would immediately go online and look up gamma.app, I think is the URL. It's an AI-powered presentation tool. So my presentation actually started with a slide deck that I had created in PowerPoint. But with Gamma, you can either start fresh and just prompt it to create some presentation slides for you based on a topic, or you can even upload a presentation and it'll convert it into a presentation for you and add additional slides. So a lot of the content you'll see in this slide deck is actually content that was either created whole cloth by AI. Actually, there are very few slides, or I created 100% myself. Those are some few slides. But then most of the slides are actually me working in tandem with the AI to co-create the content. Okay. And so this is, I think, a good application, a good example of working with an AI as an assistant. And that's something I'm going to recommend when we get down to the competencies.
Excuse me, Dr. Krakow. Is
Yes.
this a paid subscription or is this a free tier for the Gamma AI tool?
Well, so that's a great question. So the way that Gamma works is it gives you a certain number of credits to create content using their AI tool. And I almost created the entire presentation with just the free credits they gave me. So by the end of it, to finish it up, I did have to, I paid for a 1 month subscription, which at that point, was not, in any way, angry about, because I mean, I had done so much with it by then, and I'm so impressed by it that I thought it's worth it. What is it, $10 for a 1 month subscription? Why not? They have annual subscriptions and things like that, and you can cancel your subscription, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I did end up paying for the premium level, but I was able to build most of the presentation at the freemium level. And in fact, if I had known the tool set a little better, I probably could have gotten away with building the entire presentation at the freemium level. And I didn't see any difference in terms of the tools that they give you. At the freemium level, I seem to get the same number of tools. It's just that, they once you get to the end of your free credits, then you cannot generate anymore. And that was an issue, obviously. Now you are able to download your presentations as a PDF or a PowerPoint or other formats. And so I can actually show this. I could have opened it up in PowerPoint, but I liked the animations that happen when you show it from the website itself. So this is actually being displayed from the browser. Okay,
Thank you, Professor.
sure thing. Okay, so now that I've disclosed that, let's get to our roadmap. So today I'm going to talk about a few things. I'm going to talk about, first, I didn't want to take any of it for granted. So we're going to talk about what is AI. We'll cover some core concepts and terminology. Then we'll get into the case for AI in education. And there I'm going to actually pull from some survey material that we did here at the University of Louisiana Lafayette and show you some of that data. Next, we'll talk about some AI tools, practical applications. And then we'll get into those competencies that I've mentioned a few times, some skills for AI integrated future. And finally, we'll end with some key takeaways and Q&A. Okay. And by the way, all these images, this is all AI generated. In fact, this slide, I asked it to create this roadmap slide, and it did a pretty good job. Then I went in and edited some of the content. The image, it's got built-in image generators, built-in templates, all kinds of stuff. It's a really neat app. Okay. Oh, that was not supposed to be there. Let me get rid of that one. All right. So what is AI? You know, we have C3PO here. AI is the simulation of human intelligence by machines, right? That's probably the shortest definition that you can provide for that. The simulation of human intelligence processes by machines. So that's where, and you've heard of the Turing test, right? Where a computer is considered to reach a level of artificial intelligence when it can fool a human that's communicating with it, right? And some people have said that we've already gotten there, right? That the AI is good enough to fool you into thinking that it's a real person you're communicating with. So AI has been around in pop culture for quite a while. This slide, by the way, was generated by the AI itself, and I kept it. I thought it was pretty neat. But the image I've added here, anybody familiar with RUR? So it might surprise you. This was a novel going back to 1920 by Karl Čapek, a Hungarian author. And it's as far as I know, it's the first sort of representation of artificial intelligence in literature, right? 1920, already imagining AI robots. And of course, what do the AI robots do in 1920? Well, they're being used as essentially a slave labor force, and they rebel, right? So the fear of AI goes back all the way to the beginning of representations of AI in literature. And the slide here talks about representations in video games. Um, Thank you for correcting me. It was a Czech author. My bad there. I need to check my references. Um, but so the fear goes back, and there are lots of other films we can talk about. 2001: A Space Odyssey is mentioned here, the HAL 9000, and you saw how that ended up. Of course, the Terminator film. So we have this ever-present fear and danger of the AI getting, kind of getting away from us and turning on us. And so I think that's that fear that's represented today, as people are staring at this AI in our culture and thinking about, how is this going to affect me, not just as a student, but as an employee, as a parent, etc., in so many ways. Okay, so a little bit of understanding goes a long way to dispel some of that fear. So we talked about the literary origins going back to 1920. The technology, in most cases, people talk about it really building up starting in the 50s. We have our symbolic AI at that point. Then we head into the machine learning era. And from there, deep learning with artificial neural networks, and finally, generative AI today. Now, I am not an expert in AI technology, computer science, informatics. That is not my background, but we're going to do a little bit of a dive here. Again, AI assisted. So just to understand these stages. So the symbolic AI stage, the 1950s era, was all about rules-based systems, right? We used logical reasoning and representations of knowledge in order for the machines to be able to kind of create representations of our world, right? And learn that way. The next stage really focused on something different. We had machine learning. This is where the machines start to do pattern recognition. Instead of learning from rules, they learn from examples. They have predictive capabilities and lots of real world applications. Okay, this was then enhanced by the creation of artificial neural networks, ANNs, that mimic how the human brain is structured, right? And actually, these deep neural networks are really what's at the core of the latest stage of generative AI, as I understand it. So these neural networks allow it to process much faster, to identify patterns much faster, to make decisions much faster. So now we're at generative AI, right? And what is different about this AI? In the past, the AI could classify things, it could identify patterns, you know. Now it can also generate entirely new material. That's what's different. As of what, November 2022, when ChatGPT went public or was announced to the public. Now, ChatGPT pre-existed 2022, but that's when a lot of us heard about it. That's when it really hit. That's when the user base exploded, right? They talk about how it was the fastest, growth in users of any application in modern history, right? I forget how fast it took to get to 1 billion users. What was it, like February they got there? I mean, it was incredible how fast the public signed on to this new technology. And there are some pieces to how this works, right? There's a large language model, right, where they put, you know, incredible amounts of human data run through these large language models, right, to train the AI. They also have what's called a GPT, right, which is this generative pre-trained transformer, and that helps it to better sort of parse and understand that content. And then out of that content, when you interact with that trained model, it can now spit back, natural language responses to your questions, right? And this is something that we've never seen before as the general public. And so of course, you can understand why people would be concerned. I remember when this first hit, people were talking about how the AI is sentient. It was telling them to do things. They were afraid that it was going to take over, control our grids and do this, that, and the other thing. And there are still concerns about this. I was listening the other day, how the US and China were squabbling about whether the AI should have control over the nuclear access codes, right? Because we're afraid that the Terminator ending is going to happen and Skynet's going to launch those missiles. I mean, this is where we are, right? We're concerned about these things because we don't understand what the AI can do. I've heard the AI described as a black box. We don't quite understand with all these billions of transformers, like what is it doing in there? How is it evolving even? And some people have predicted, I heard there was the Senate had a panel of scientists, and they asked them, what's going to happen next, and some of them were predicting the next stage of AI, right? The next frontier, artificial general intelligence, and even super intelligence, where the machines are more intelligent than humans in every domain. That this might happen as early as like 5 years from now, right? Now, 5 years from now, we might look back and laugh at this and say, oh, how could they ever think? But, when scientists were asked about the things that AI can currently do, and they were asked, when do you think that would be, available, that technology? They were predicting 2030, 2050, 2080, and we have it today, right? Things like text to video. If you've ever used HeyGen or Runway or some of these other applications that can do these things, you know what I'm talking about. So we're not quite sure how fast this technology is going to evolve, where it's going to go, what it can do. But right now we're kind of in this Goldilocks period where I think it's not. We have the potential to use this technology to enhance what we do, rather than to see it as kind of a threat to us. Okay. And by the way, they talk about weak AI versus strong AI. So the generative AI we have is considered the weak AI because it can do a really good job, human level performance in one domain, right? But the holy grail is to get to that artificial general intelligence where the AI can perform as well or better than a human in all domains, right? So that's what scientists are sort of holding their breath and waiting for to get to that moment. But we're not there yet. Okay, so with all the hype about AI and all the concern and confusion about it, we decided last year to do a survey of our students and faculty at my home institution, University of Louisiana Lafayette, just to see, well, how deep is this penetrating? Are people actually using it? What do they feel about it? What are their concerns? What do they want to know more? And so we ran a survey of both students and faculty. You can see the number here, 644 respondents. Most of those were students. And I think if we ran this survey again today, or if we ran it at CUNY SPS, we'd probably get equal or better, more extreme responses, I think. And you'll see when we get to some of the questions. Okay, so we asked them, how familiar are you with AI? So you can see here where the students landed. Most of them answered slightly familiar or moderately familiar, right? The faculty, they were actually even more familiar than the students. So that shows you your faculty are playing with these tools, right? They are, trying to figure out, what do these things do? Maybe they're just doing that just to see what can students do with these tools, right? I can tell you, working with faculty, at least at the beginning, there was huge concern that these tools would be used for plagiarism, et cetera, et cetera. So, a lot of faculty jump on board to see what this was all about. When asked, faculty were asked, have you utilized any AI-driven tools? 32% said this was actually in your courses. 32% said yes, which, 2 years in, 32% of faculty using them in their courses. I think that's a pretty good number. And of course, the top tool they used was ChatGPT, right? When asked if they've ever used an AI content detector, and this was surprisingly low. I thought they would have answered higher. 28% said yes, and they said Turnitin. Now we have Turnitin as well at CUNY SPS, and Turnitin, if you don't know, has an AI detection tool built in. What it does is it uses an AI algorithm You run the paper through, it uses an AI algorithm to try to detect if AI is being used. Now, of course, it's been the subject of much scandal because there are lots of false negatives and lots of false positives. And so even Turnitin will tell you you cannot rely on this AI detector to sort of be a fence to keep out student use of AI, right? Student AI generated work. And then to make things even more complicated, there are all kinds of other like spoofer apps out there that you can run something through ChatGPT, write your paper with it, and then take it and run it through this spoofer app, and it changes the wording ever so slightly so that it can now fool AI detectors like Turnitin, right? So this is all common knowledge. I'm sure students know about this stuff. And so, the bottom line is we tell faculty you can't rely on an AI detector to do all the work for you. That's not how you're going to keep out AI. And if this were a presentation for faculty, I'd be talking about, strategies for either preventing AI use or even promoting AI use, because after all, our students are going to graduate and the workforce is already using AI. But this is not a presentation for faculty, so I won't get into that. So we asked our faculty, should we have policies in place for AI plagiarism? Overwhelming 89% yes. Should we have recommended or required training for faculty on AI? 75% said yes. So faculty, they want those policies in place. They want the professional development in place. This is a disruptive technology, and they want to know more. So here's a bunch of other things I'm concerned about, using AI to write papers. Yes, AI tools in education are helpful in understanding complex concepts. Yes, AI technologies have the potential to enhance learning. Yes. So to me, what's interesting here is that, you have this kind of dichotomy of, on the one hand, I'm afraid that the students are going to cheat with it, but on the other hand, I think it could be a great tool for my class. Right? And so it shows you again that range of emotions that we saw in that word cloud at the beginning, that we're both, kind of a little bit of afraid, but also a little bit, excited about what this can do. And I think that's true of any good, technology. Now, on the student side, have you ever used any AI tools for educational purposes? 54% said yes. So I think that number would be way higher today. I've talked to students about AI, and they tell me things like everyone's using it and I don't know if I should use it, but I feel like if I don't use it, then I'm going to fall behind. I've literally heard students tell me this. And so I think that number is probably much higher today. Than what we saw last year. And of course, the number one tool they're using is ChatGPT. Still the best known, although who knows, with DeepSeek and some of these other tools that have come out, that are other, AI chatbots, they may at one point dethrone ChatGPT. Do you believe that AI tools could improve learning in the classroom? 59% said yes. This to me speaks to the fact that I think we have to have an open and honest conversation with our students about using AI in our classes, right? I teach a course on digital literacy. It is a course that is, created by the department. I don't have full control over it. And so, to keep it simple, I have a statement that says we don't allow AI use in this class, right? Now, if I were to revise that course with AI in mind, I would have to take a hard look at all of my assignments, because I know that many of them would be easily performed by ChatGPT. And that's something that, well, what's the point of giving an assignment that a student can just pluck into a chatbot and get out, a response that, meets the requirements for the assignment. So if you really want to use AI in the classroom, it really, really, really requires you to fundamentally rethink your course, fundamentally rethink your learning objectives, fundamentally rethink your assessments. Absolutely, your assessments. You have to think about that. In fact, one of the best activities I heard about in a presentation from Arizona State University, they have what's called an AI playground. That's a website resource they've created to help their faculty. And they trained a GPT, a chatbot, to basically to take your assessments. So you put your assessment through their chatbot, and it tells you, how easily it could complete that assessment. And that way you can sort of test your assessments against the AI and see, is this an assessment that, can, prevent AI use or not, right? And I'll tell you, I've used ChatGPT enough that I understand the way it writes. And I get from time to time, I'll get student work that I think is AI generated. And understanding that Turnitin is not very reliable. And of course, it only just gives you a number, which is really hard if a student disputes it. You can't just throw a number at it and say, well, it says that it's 45% likely, AI generated. Most of the time, I'll just grade it because it does a poor job, right? I mean, it has limitations. So again, anyway, yes, use it in the classroom, but use it intelligently and make sure to rethink the way that you're teaching that course if you're a faculty member. And if you're a student, you know, we'll get to some of the tips later on. But and move on to the next one. Okay, so here, please indicate the degree to which you agree or disagree with. I would be very excited about learning and or using AI tools in the classroom. Fantastic. I hope this presentation does a little bit of that for you. I would be very optimistic about learning and or using AI tools in the classroom. Great. AI in the classroom can be very helpful. Prepare me. Yes, absolutely. I am concerned that AI in the classroom can favor those students who are more proficient at technology and computers. So this one is interesting because from the studies that I've seen in the workplace about AI, the AI actually tends to impact students who struggle, let's say, with writing. They're the ones who are impacted the most. And what it does is it actually gives them a boost and a benefit. So it starts to close those gaps between, say, higher performing employees and lower performing employees. And so some people have said that the AI can be kind of a great equalizer in the workforce. But that's preliminary data. We need to have more data before we can, really understand that impact. Okay, so we did this whole survey. There were lots of other questions, but the three big takeaways were: one, we need more faculty development. Obviously, faculty feel like they don't know enough. They want to learn more. Two, we need more AI literacy for students, right? And so actually, because of this, we actually went and built a course for students called Empowering AI Literacy that covers a lot of the things that I'm just going to glean in the rest of this presentation, but things like ethical use, prompting skills, an introduction to AI, tools, the future of learning and work. These are topics that free course covers, and we offer it to all of our students now here in Louisiana. The last piece was institutional policies. When the AI first came out and started impacting higher ed, some universities rushed to get some policies in place, and others were kind of slower to the game. Now, once you have a policy in place, then you have a foundation to stand on, especially if you're a faculty member who's concerned about things like AI plagiarism. Okay, so that's sort of a little peek into the culture on campus, but how about in the workplace? So here I'm going to throw some stats at you to show you just how prevalent AI has become in the workforce. So the first stat, this I think is for Coursera, 1,060% growth of enrollment in generative AI courses over the past year. Okay, that's incredible. 1,060%. So clearly, there's a demand and a need for more AI literacy skills, right? People want it, they're looking for it, and they're finding it wherever they can. Number two, 93% of businesses plan to use AI-powered solutions by 2028. Now, that's speculation. They're projecting to the future, but still think about that. 93% of businesses say that they plan to use AI-powered solution. Now, that, obviously there's the concern about a workforce displacement, jobs being lost, and I think that's all very real. So, again, I mentioned this Goldilocks phase. We may be in this Goldilocks phase right now where, AI is something we can use to do our jobs better. Who knows where that's going in the future, but clearly businesses plan to make the most use of AI possible. 75% of global knowledge workers are already using AI in the workplace. That surprised me. And I'm not sure about the methodology on that one, but if that's true, that's a lot of people already using AI in the workplace. Now, that's definitely true of me and a lot of my associates. 66, so this one really surprised me. 66% of business leaders would not hire someone without AI skills. Now, What does that mean? What is an AI skill? How do they even evaluate that? They just ask them, do you have an AI skill? Who knows? But the point is, it is a priority for business leaders that the people they're employing have some level of AI familiarity, right, or competency. Um, and we're only 2 or 3 years out from ChatGPT making the huge splash, all the hype and whatnot, and we're already at this point where AI is seen as an important skill for employees to have. So when all this first landed, I remember watching an episode of John Oliver's Last Week Tonight. I don't know if you're fans of John Oliver, great comedian, but also provides some really good insights and commentary on current events. And he had an episode just devoted to artificial intelligence. This was back in February of 2023. And there was a quote, and he was talking about lawyers in the quote, but really it applies to all professions. He says, I think if done right, it's not going to be AI replacing people. It's going to be people working with AI replacing people who don't work with AI. Yeah, that's right. That was more than 2 years ago. And 2 years ago, John Oliver was saying, look, we're not at the point where the AI is going to replace people. It's going to be more that people who can use AI are going to replace people who can't use AI. And again, this may be that Goldilocks phase where, we're at a point where we can still use the AI to enhance what we do in the workforce, and maybe that'll change tomorrow, and we'll see lots of job displacement because of AI. But right now, it's still the case that if you know how to use the AI, there's a demand for AI skills, and that will give you a leg up. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about some types of tools. The tools are, by the way, are always changing, always, always, always changing. We offer tools here at UL Lafayette for our faculty, and those tools are quickly adding AI components. Probably you've seen that all of the major apps that you use have added some kind of AI function to them. And eventually, I think what's going to happen is that this technology will all start to converge. So instead of having tools that just do this or just do that or just do that, you'll have sort of Swiss Army knife tools that do them all. But for now, we can kind of group them roughly into some categories here. So you have your basic text generators, right? So you can create, these are your chatbots, right? Where you prompt it and it can write all kinds of interesting stuff for you. You've got image generators. So the image generators can produce realistic images or any kind of style that you want. They can imitate real artists from history. Really cool stuff if you've never used it. Um, Third category, multimedia generators. So this is kind of a lump of various types of apps that can create audio, create video, create presentations like Gamma. We use some of these apps in my office actually. And those are really, I would say, like they help you save a lot of time. They're very high productivity increasing apps. Next, and I think this is particularly relevant for students, there are research and writing assistants. So if you use Grammarly, that's a writing assistant that's got AI built in. Um, and that's one of those things where, it's kind of fuzzy. We talk about, well, we want to prevent our students from using AI, but the apps they already use have AI built in. And in fact, they've always had AI. I mean, autocorrect is a sort of more primitive version of AI compared to the generative AI we have today. But Grammarly now has some really high-tech AI stuff happening. And students have always been using that. Microsoft Office has AI built in now, right? So it's really hard to kind of separate between regular applications and AI applications anymore. Code generators. So if you're in a situation where you need to write code, there's AI can do that pretty well. And that there are a whole bunch of apps just for that. And then this last category is focusing on tutoring, study guides. There are lots of AI applications out there that can help you as a student to perform better, do a better job in your coursework. So just to list some of these apps, so text generators, ChatGPT, obviously, Microsoft Copilot, Google Gemini, Claude, there are lots and lots more. These are some of the best known ones. On the image generator side, and the text generators can do image generation now too. Again, as I said, they're starting to converge. But you have DALL-E, that was a big one early on. That's also by OpenAI. Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, Adobe Firefly. Some of these are free, some of these are paid. On the multimedia generator side, HeyGen, we've actually used HeyGen to create a fully generated AI video that looks, we have a lifelike version of someone in my office starring in that video. And what you can do with these things is you can run actual video through it to train it, and then it can generate videos of you. 11 Labs does audio. Again, we can do it can reproduce your audio and have you say anything. So people worry about deep fakes and things like that because the technology can enable that. Runway, and of course Gamma as a presentation app. Research Rabbit is a great tool for doing research. It's an AI assistant for actually, it has access to some journal repositories and can get you some decent peer-reviewed stuff. Perplexity is kind of a more academic grade chatbot. And of course, Grammarly is a writing assistant. Code generators, I haven't played with these. I don't do coding, but there's a ton of coding apps out there, and even ChatGPT will write you some code. We had ChatGPT write HTML code the other day, and it worked just fine. AI tutoring study guides, Magic School. This is something that my team here really loves. It can do so much. It can, for faculty, it can write lesson plans. For students, it can do flashcards, study guides, all kinds of stuff. On the tutoring side, Khan Academy has a built-in AI sort of assistant slash tutor called, I think they called it Conmigo. And Tutor AI is another one. So, obviously there's lots of ways to apply these AI tools, and they're being, as I said, they're being integrated in every application you can think of, and even in hardware. I mean, refrigerators are now coming with AI built in, right? So you've got AI everywhere. If you want a full list of AI tools, I encourage you to visit futurepedia.ai.io. They've got all these tools grouped into categories. There are so many, and they're updating it all the time. That's an AI directory I recommend. Sure, and I will happily share this presentation for anyone, but it's Futurepedia. I see someone's asking for the link. Futurepedia.io. That should do it. Okay, so clearly these tools are going to make an impact, have been making an impact on education for students. And by the way, this is one of those rare slides that the AI generated, and I just left it alone because I thought, oh, that looks cool. Personalized learning pathways, 24/7 tutoring, automated feedback, content creation support. Yeah, all that for educators. Grading automation actually does a really good job of writing rubrics. I've never used it for grading, and I'll tell you why. When we get to those competencies, course content development, differentiated instruction, administrative efficiency, any kind of technical writing, it can do really well. I know Microsoft is trying to push its Copilot AI, and right now you can use it for free, but if you pay for it, it can integrate with all of your Microsoft applications, including your Outlook, right, which is their email application. And supposedly, it'll now have access to all the emails you've ever written, so it gets trained on your voice, and then it can actually generate responses for your emails. Like, it can write your emails for you. I haven't tested that. I don't have access to it. We haven't paid for it, but that is fascinating. So, administrative efficiency. So, of course, on the challenge side, you've got digital divide, privacy considerations. That speaks to the issue of grading. I would never take a student work and stick it in an AI to grade, because I've basically just given a student's work to OpenAI or any of these corporations, and now it is part of their training data. So that's definitely a privacy concern, an ethical concern, um, and we have to keep ethics first and foremost when we're thinking about how we use these AI tools. Okay. So let's talk about some core competencies and then we're out. Acceptable use. Okay. These are like the social skills. So, number one, always ask your professor, what is acceptable use? Okay. If you don't know, don't use it. If there's not a statement in the syllabus, and I encourage you to look for a syllabus statement. If there's not a syllabus statement on acceptable use, reach out to the professor, say, hey, I'm thinking about using Gamma. I'm thinking about using ChatGPT. I have this, you gave us this assignment. Is it okay if I do some brainstorming with this tool? Just ask the professor. And of course, familiarize yourself with any institutional policies. Chances are that they have some policy on AI, possibly tucked into their plagiarism or academic integrity policy. So go find out, because if you break that policy and you get caught, then you're in a bad situation. The second types of competencies have to do with ethical use. Okay. So number one, always be transparent. Um, People are using it, all over the place. I've been, we write research papers, we submit to journals, and the journals will have a policy on ethical use, and it usually have some kind of required declaration if you've used the AI. Nobody slaps you on the wrist. They just say, make sure that you're transparent about it. And sometimes they'll tell you to follow certain citation guidelines as well. MLA, APA, and some other organizations, I'm sure, they have rules for how to cite AI generated material. Okay. We're still in this sort of Wild West situation where the AI generated content is not considered yours. Even though it's fuzzy, right? Because it all has to be prompted. It's not like it makes stuff by itself. Um, I think the example of the camera is a good one here. When the camera was first invented, you could never you couldn't copyright a picture that you took, because the picture was considered the material of the camera. It wasn't your own copyright. Now, eventually that got changed, and people came to understand that, well, there's a human being behind the camera who's snapping the shot, and so they do have a right to copyright of that image. And who knows where things will go as far as AI generated content, if it'll be like the camera, and it'll just sort of um, defer to the human person who initiated it, and it'll be your ownership. But for now, a lot of places are saying no, cite it as if it's someone else that generated it. Okay. Data privacy. I mentioned the problem about trying to use AI for grading. As great as that would sound for professors, that would save a lot of time. But hey, you're throwing student work into this black box, and it's owned by a corporation, and now you're giving that to someone, and that is definitely a FERPA violation. So if you don't know what FERPA is, that's the regulations around student material, student content, student rights. So you always have to be aware of data privacy. I could do a whole presentation just on ethical use. I'm not going to go into all that. But I just want you to be aware of that. And of course, you also want to avoid copyright infringement. It's tempting to take some material that some other author has created, whether that's in a text, image, audio, whatever, stick it in the AI and have it modified in some way. That's clear copyright infringement. Unless there's an open source license on it, you can't do that, right? So be aware of that. Okay, I'm going to talk about effective use for the rest of this presentation: co-thinking and co-creation, prompt engineering, and then how to critically evaluate your output, and we're done. So let's get into that. Okay, so co-thinking versus co-creation. Co-thinking is basically where you are brainstorming with the AI, okay? If you have to come up with a topic or an outline, or you have some questions about a topic, the AI is really great. It's a really great assistant to help co-think with you. Now, the co-creation is where you're actually generating some final product using the AI to help you. Okay, and that's what this entire presentation is. This is co-creation, right? This presentation. And it can generate drafts. And as an instructor, I can see faculty, having their students co-create with an AI and then have them evaluate that work and try to see how they could improve that work. That might be an interesting assignment to do. So just real quick, how a chatbot works: it gets trained right on those large language models with the transformers, blah, blah, blah. But then there's a stage where the user has to input something, right? That's the prompt. You have to prompt it. It then generates a response, and you have that output. Okay, so prompting is really important. And I mentioned, when I did the word cloud about important AI skills, I didn't see anyone talk about prompt engineering, as it's called sometimes. But prompting is very, very important. And if you don't prompt an AI well, it's garbage in, garbage out. And that's how a lot of times I can tell if a student has used AI and they have done a poor job with it. I can tell, because whatever that output is, it does not answer the question. Maybe it doesn't cite the sources it was supposed to cite. It's not formatted the way it's supposed to be. The tone is off. Lots of things are off, right? A lot of that can be addressed by good prompting. So we actually created a prompting framework called Crafted. That's part of our AI literacy course for students that I mentioned earlier. And this is it's long, but it's very simple if you think about it. So a prompt is, a written instruction that you put into the chatbot. So in those written instructions, you have to absolutely have one thing, and that's the assignment. What is the task that it has to perform? Okay. Without that, it does nothing. But then there are other things that help it to understand how to do that job better. One, give it some that's supposed to say context. I'm sorry. Um, Bad AI. That's supposed to say context. Give it some context. The context, so describe the situation in which they're doing this task, right? Um, Identify what the role of the AI is, right? What role is AI playing here? Is it you? Is it someone else? What is it? What is the role? By the same token, who is the audience, right? Who is it writing for? And this could be, and this is actually a fun assignment. Have it write for a college, have it write for your professor, but then have it revise that and write for a fifth grader. It's really interesting how the rhetoric changes. I've already mentioned the assignment. You absolutely have to tell it what the task is. Format. What should the output look like? Should it be paragraphs, bullets? How many pages? How does it handle citations? All that is part of the format. Tone is the emotional content, right? Should it be friendly, stern, both? Who knows? If you want to write a professional letter or email, it's good to say, keep the tone professional, light, but friendly, but firm, whatever, and you'll get a better output. Now, exemplar, this is basically a sample that you would like it to follow. So if you know exactly what the format should be, you have a sample of something similar, you can upload that. You can upload documents into a text bot, a chat bot, and say, hey, make it look like this. But another way to use an exemplar is if you want it to sound like you can upload samples of your writing. So you're kind of training it on the spot and say, have it sound like this. And that's another way to give it some samples. And then finally, the details. If there are specific things that it needs to do, like cite from these specific sources, or include these specific points, or have a certain type of introduction or whatever, those are things you want to tell it. Okay. So the more information that you can give it, the more concise you are in your prompting, the better the output will be. Now, even the best output is not going to be, even the best prompt is not going to give you a perfect output. So we talk about iterating, right? That's where you keep going back and changing and refining the prompt. And the wonderful thing about the latest stage of AI is that it can keep an ongoing conversation. It has memory. You remember Siri back in the day? You can tell Siri or Alexa to do something, but then as soon as you gave it that prompt, it forgot. Like the next time you talk to it, it didn't remember what you just asked it. Well, that's not how ChatGPT works. With ChatGPT and these other chatbots, you can build upon the conversation. So you can say, hey, do this, and then it outputs it. And you can say, okay, that's cool, but can you change it this way? And then it gives those changes. And then you say, okay, can you further change that, right? And this is that cycle of iterating that prompt and getting to the output that you want. Okay, because chances are you're not going to get exactly what you want the first time around. Okay, and then finally, and again, I could talk forever about this. You want to evaluate, and these are some key skills. Evaluate what that output is, right? So you've got this output, you like it. Okay, make sure it's accurate. Make sure it's actually addressing your goals. It does what you need it to do. To make sure that you look for hallucinations. This is where the AI, it's sort of like it's kind of like having a dog, the dog's eager to please, and the AI is eager to please, but sometimes it doesn't have access to the information it needs to actually fulfill your prompt. And so what does it do? It just invents information. It invents facts. It invents sources whole cloth. Make sure you double check everything. Make sure those sources, those links actually go to real sources. And last, bias detection. So the AI, again, it's only as good as what it's trained on, and the training material can have inherent bias in it. Okay, the algorithms can have inherent bias in it. So you want to review any content that it generates for bias. Okay. Okay, so some key takeaways. One, AI is not new, it continues to evolve. Two, students and faculty are already using it, and businesses are increasingly requiring it. Three, there are a variety of AI tools available and they're changing every day. And 4, there's a need for greater AI literacy skills and competencies. Okay, hopefully I have covered each of those, and I am open for your questions.
We encourage all of you at this time to share any questions you may have in the chat. If you're most comfortable doing so there, that's fine as well. Otherwise, please feel free to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, great. So, hello, my name is Dennis. I am the president of the AI Club at CUNY SPS. And thank you so much for a great presentation. I feel like you already went over some things that I always like to stress to my club members about. Um, One thing I would like to mention is also that we had, we have a kiosk article about the AI Club. So hoping like anybody who's still more interested in AI, who wants to get more hands on with AI Club, I mean with AI, they can join the club. And then, but for you, my question for you is, have you heard of Claude for Education?
Yeah, hey Dennis, nice to meet you, and I'm so happy to hear that there's an AI club. I actually got an email about announcing that recently. Um, and I think if I remember correctly, the AI is sort of trained to perform better in educational situations, educational contexts. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so from what I'm reading, Northeastern University has already implemented Cloud for Education in their
Okay.
curriculum. And
Fantastic.
one of the things about Claude is that it has something called learning mode. So it never gives you directly the answer, but it does, you know, guide you to the answer.
Oh,
So
that's fascinating.
M-
Okay.
My question to you is like, do you think that sooner, like maybe over the next year, I'll say next year, but do you think over the next year, sooner or later, most courses in college would have AI incorporated into the curriculum?
That's a great question. In the next year, I would say no. You always have your early adopters, right? And this is just based on my anecdotal experience working with faculty. A lot of faculty are still at the stage of like, the ostrich with the head in the ground, right? Just hoping it goes away. There's still a surprising number of people like that. They're just hoping it goes away, the hype passes and the AI just disappears and we're back to normal. And what I tell them is that's never going to happen. This is one of those earth-shattering, groundbreaking, disruptive tools like the calculator, right? The calculator didn't go away, and math professors just had to adapt to that. And they did. They did it splendidly. And students use calculators all the time, and it doesn't detract from their ability to learn in the classroom. And I think that's what we're going to have to do with these tools, but I don't see that happening in a year. Maybe 5, 10 years, we'll get that kind of saturation where, most classes will kind of be redesigned with AI in mind, using things like Claude for Education. That would be wonderful. I'm definitely a big champion of using AI in the classroom because I know that students will eventually become workers and they're going to have proficiency in these tools. And so why not start now? In fact, we had a panel of industry experts come to our campus about, I would say, 2 months ago. And we asked them point blank, like, what do you think educators should be doing? And they all said the same thing. We need you to be introducing AI tools in the classroom. We need these students to be proficient. So, but I don't think that's going to happen in a year. It's a lot of work to overhaul a course and kind of build it from the ground up, from starting with the learning objectives and thinking like, okay, I'm going to have them use AI. What do I need to change in this course? Although I do like that Claude for Education does kind of have, it sounds like it has that limiter where it won't just do the work for you. It'll guide you. And that's pretty interesting. But again, students have access to all these other tools as well. And that's kind of part of the problem is like they're not limited to Claude. They can use anything. What do you think?
Honestly, that leads me to well, maybe not to my next question, but to my next thought with is that any student in college will be restricted to one AI, and if you do not use this AI, we can tell they use another AI, and we can see that you're not actually learning. You're just trying to your best to get the answer. So that's why I was thinking that maybe Cloud for Education, many universities in the world will start picking up one AI, and tell
Yeah.
people like you only can use this AI, and we can monitor your prompts too. So if we know that you're not learning, we know that you're not using this AI. So that's what I'm thinking is going to the future. It's going to be some ecosystems with one particular AI, like
Yeah.
Gemini, Copilot, other ones.
Yeah. And look, I think that would be a step forward if we could get an enterprise level AI for higher ed. I know ChatGPT offers enterprise licenses, and some campuses have purchased a license for that. Obviously, whatever tool that the university is willing to pay for, that's going to be the one that students will use the most, faculty will use the most. That won't prevent them from using other tools, but it'll encourage them to move in that direction. And if it's a tool that does have some sort of safety measures built in, I think that's great. Yeah, I think that would be a step forward.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Hello, how are you? I have one. Hi, Professor Kroko.
Hey, Katerina.
Hi. I took your class last semester. Wonderful one.
I recall it. Thank you. Yeah.
That's how I remember the RUR. Sorry about that. I have a question for you. Actually, two. The first one is, did you find any well-written like policies across the universities that deal with AI, like well-written ones? Because as you said, it's still very unclear. Even CUNY has not really clear rules how to use it. And the second one would be, actually, I forgot the second one. Go ahead.
That's a great question. Yes, I did. Actually, in the very beginning when there was panic around I remember there was a Google Doc that some educators had created for other people to share their policies. I don't know if that Google Doc is still available, but that was what was happening. We were all sharing policy statements to kind of help each other write those things, and we did find some examples of good ones, good university-wide policies, but also good like syllabus statements that could be easily copy pasted, like for or against AI use. They're out there. I could probably dig up some links if
Yeah,
that would
that
be
would be.
helpful. Hmm.
And actually, I remember the second one. If you can tell me with the citation of AI, what's the best policy or like how we could approach it? What's the best way to cite AI in your work?
I don't think there's just one. I think it depends on the context. So if you're taking a course and that course uses APA,
Mm-hmm.
then the instructor may decide, you know what, we're going to follow APA's recommendations for citing AI. And APA has its way of doing it. If the course uses MLA, we can follow MLA style. And MLA has a recommendation for that. It's still kind of the Wild West where there's not one style, and there's not even these style manuals, they haven't fully fleshed out exactly what it should be. But that's as good as it's going to get. So I think that's a question for your professor. If you're taking a course right now and you're using AI and it's allowed, well, ask the professor, how would you like this to be cited? What needs to be cited? Like if I only use it to brainstorm or draft, do I still have to cite the AI, right? Or is it only if, some content, actually makes it into the final draft that's submitted. So again, I think it all starts with figuring out what's acceptable use, and then you can talk about the ethical use from there.
Yeah, thank you so much. I definitely
Great
have
question.
questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Katerina. Are there any other questions? Well, I can say my biggest takeaway from the session today is the quote from John Oliver, where we're looking at the future and not just AI taking over like some people speculate and are afraid of, but more so the more people knowing how to use AI, that will be the takeover from the people that necessarily don't know how to use it or even refuse to conform to using it in their industry or even in their schoolwork. That was my biggest takeaway as a person who had the fear that AI would be a takeover rather than an integrative type of system. I also took note that you mentioned one of our bigger challenges is the fact that we will need to do critical evaluations of the AI systems. And I was wondering if you had an idea of who would be the most qualified to do those type of critical evaluations. Would it be professors? Would it be anyone in particular in the AI industry you can think of?
That's a great question. Critical evaluations of the AI system. Well, I know that the industry is working to put some policies and measures in place, like for instance, watermarking, right? So if you want to know if something has been AI generated and there's a watermark system in place, then anything that that AI produces will have some encoded sign that says, hey, this is from AI. And that will help with faculty who are trying to curb the misuse of these systems, right? I talked about co-thinking and co-creation as opposed to just having the AI do the work for you, right? Because there's no learning in that situation. And so, if you have a watermark system in place, but that would need to be implemented at the level of the companies themselves. Now, that also could be something that's government mandated, legislated, right? And so I think in addition to, higher ed having policies in place, I think we need to have our governmental institutions putting some policies in place. Now, if you're talking about the local level and selecting AI and defining how to use AI, then that would be probably the role of the faculty member, or even better, maybe their department can get together and put some heads together and really think through, like, okay, we have this curriculum, we have this program. How do we want to intelligently, and collaboratively put in place some AI procedures, AI tools, AI assignments, and guidelines for our students? Because I don't think that it's a lot of work for a faculty member to get, you know, to that level of understanding, awareness, proficiency with these tools. I have a PhD in English. AI is not my thing. Now, my day job, I'm training faculty to use the technology, and so I've made time to learn it. But a lot of faculty are deep in their teaching, their research, their writing, and if AI is not something that they're knowledgeable about, I think it's a big ask to say, hey, you need to become um, proficient with this technology and make decisions that are keep your students' best interests in mind. Typically, in that situation, that's where the faculty member will say, "I don't have the time to deal with this. I'm just not. I'm just going to ban it. I'm going to use Turnitin, right? And I've told you all the problems with using Turnitin, but I'm going to use just some quick fix to make sure that it stays out." So I think there need to be conversations in higher ed, at the department level, maybe the deans, the provosts, talking about what are some good policies to help guide these decisions. Because I think if you're just gonna put all that on the faculty member, some of them will you know rise to the occasion, but I think a lot of them will just they're already overwhelmed, and that's too much extra to have to do, right? And so you won't get the kind of innovation that you want to see that can adapt to this situation, in my
You
opinion.
also mentioned AI running toward exceeding us in several domains, which they are already, you mentioned, but we're headed toward a time where
Ah,
they'll be exceeding us in all domains. How long do you think before that happens? Do you predict?
I don't know. 2 years ago, we did a panel of some computer science faculty talking about, what is AI, generative AI? How does it work, right? Because we kind of wanted to platform them to come and educate the rest of us. And we invited a guy who was a former grad student from the university who had gone on to work for Google, and he worked on one of their early AI prototypes called Lambda. and he had gotten into kind of a situation with them. There was a scandal because he claimed that based on his testing of it, that it was becoming sentient, right? Yeah, you could probably look it up. I'm sure the news articles are still floating out there. I think he ended up losing his job. Anyway, he joined our panel too, and I remember he had this quote. He said that the AI was like having an army of mediocre graduate students at your disposal. That's how he described it, an army of mediocre graduate students. I'll never forget that quote. Um, I think at this point it can do work probably better than a mediocre graduate student. I mean, in some ways, sometimes it writes better than I can write. If I have a specific assignment for it. Now that's just in one domain, but who knows where it's going? And clearly, there's an arms race with AI, and the technology is just going to get better, right? That's where it usually goes. You rarely see technology getting worse over time. And so, yes, eventually it's going to get to the point where it's as good or better than humans in every domain. When that happens, I don't know. I wish I could answer that question. Like I said, there have been people who've predicted, as little as 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 20 years from now. I don't hear anyone saying, oh, it's far off in the future. Like, we're at the point where we can conceive of this technology being so advanced that it can essentially operate with human level intellect or better. And I think that's astounding, right? The implications are so far reaching, and that is why I think people are so concerned at the same time, because if it can do these things, then what does it need us? Why am I necessary in the workforce? That's one question that's come up, right? Why does anyone need? I mean, some people are saying, I see these memes from Bill Gates where he's predicting that, like, we won't need teachers anymore. 5 years from now, the AI will be doing all the teaching. And that's very unsettling for a teacher, obviously. Um, is that true? I don't know. He's the same guy who 10 years ago said iPads were going to replace teachers, or whatever, Microsoft Surface devices. And that didn't come true. So I think we have to, take it all with a grain of salt and just kind of be skeptics. The technology is going to get better, and it's probably not going to disrupt as fast as people are saying. And as with this is just what, the fourth, fifth industrial revolution, right? We've survived all the other ones in the past. And so the same will happen. Maybe we'll adapt by creating new jobs or decreasing the working day. That's been a common strategy of adaptation to these industrial revolutions. So humans are, if anything, we're extremely adaptable, and we'll come up with a solution for this technology. And the technology will continue to get better, and we'll continue to figure out ways to use it. For the people who are, absolutely certain of some nightmare scenario, well, nothing I say is going to change their mind. Um, but um, but I think right now, to go back to John Oliver, it really behooves us to get familiar with that technology, because when you're able to use it and use it well, it does, even if it doesn't, give you a raise or a job or whatever, it can make your life easier if you know how to use this stuff. And so I highly recommend that people get familiar with the technology.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you all for joining us today. We're going to close out at this time, but I'd also want to remind everyone about our raffle. We will be sending an email over to everyone, encouraging you to take a short post survey about today's presentation. We would also like to let you all know, alums, faculty, staff, and students, you are all eligible to receive a CUNY SPS swag, which includes bottles, mugs, also includes tote bags, but only the students will additionally be eligible for gift cards. The more of our sessions you join this week and participate in, staying until the end, the more chances you'll have at winning one of these raffles. Our next presentation will take place tonight at 6:30 p.m. Eastern with our special guest speaker, Shane Snipes, who's an educator and entrepreneur. I want to give a special thanks to Professor Krako again for joining us today and presenting some valuable insights about advancing AI literacy with the insights, tools, and competencies that we need as students, but also we received a lot of information about the professor's point of views as well. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's presentation and we wish you well. Thank you, sir, and thank you everyone else.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.